Hello, everybody, and welcome back to CELPIP Live. It's our bi-weekly live stream on YouTube where we talk all things CELPIP. I'm your guest host, Neil, and today we've got an exciting session for you all about talking to AI to help you prepare for your CELPIP test. But before we start, let's take a look at our trivia question for this week. So in honor of the previous eclipse that happened last week, when will be the next solar eclipse? So if you know when the next solar eclipse is happening, let us know in the comments. Okay, without further ado, let's start the show. Okay, so this week we are joined again by Brandi. Hello, Brandi.
Hello, Neil. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, it's wonderful to be back. It feels like we were just here a few days ago, but it's already been 2 weeks, so time flies when you're having fun, I suppose.
Exactly. So I hear that you've been chatting with an AI recently.
I absolutely have. Yeah, I've made a new friend, and her name is ChatGPT. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about how you might use ChatGPT or other AI devices for your study purposes, whether you're learning a language or studying for the CELPIP test. So what I'd like to do is share my screen and we'll get started.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, I know that ChatGPT has been around for a good year and a half or so, and hundreds of millions of people use this app around the world. You probably are one of them if you've experimented this as well. And I know some of you, even from our last episode that Neil and I did, you had some neat ideas in our chat box talking about how you might use ChatGPT to study for CELPIP. So yes, there are lots of functions of AI that will help you with your language studies. But there are also a few that aren't so great. And we're going to have a little look at both of those options today as we get started. So very briefly, again, I know people are aware that ChatGPT has something to do with AI, but I wanted to quickly explain what it's designed to do so we can understand how it will help us with our language use. So ChatGPT itself is an AI chatbot, like a robot, and it's been designed to have friendly, intelligent conversations with you. And the way that ChatGPT has access to all of its wonderful language capabilities is because it has been trained on reams and reams of internet data. So we call them large language models. So think of all the books, articles, websites, social media sites that you can possibly imagine, and then multiply that by 100 at least. ChatGPT does have access and has been trained on literally hundreds of billions of words. So it definitely has a larger vocabulary than any one of us will have in our own lifetime. And the reason why it's been trained on so much data is because its sole purpose really is to predict the next word in a sentence. So think of it as a very, very advanced autocorrect. So if you've already gone into ChatGPT and started asking it questions and asked it to generate some answers for you, you'll see how quickly ChatGPT is able to give us some answers. And I'm going to show you some examples of that today. So again, ChatGPT will answer your questions or even produce content. So when you think of studying for a test like CELPIP, you can actually come up with your own ideas for practice questions, which is what we're going to do today. And you can also see how ChatGPT might answer those same study questions. We have to be cautious though, because like any technology, it's not perfect 100% of the time. And ChatGPT is no exception. So just because ChatGPT said it does not mean that the information is true or accurate. And this is something we all have to take into account. So we're not going to use ChatGPT today to make really important life decisions. We would need to do our fact checking if that were the purpose. Instead, again, we're going to look at how ChatGPT might help us for our CELPIP prep in particular. So thinking about your own CELPIP test, where you're going to be tested on your listening, reading, writing, and speaking skills. I'm looking at these 5 areas, we'll call them, in your language studies, hopefully that you're looking at home as you prepare for CELPIP. So what we're going to do in today's session is we are going to look at, again, some writing and speaking practice questions from our free CELPIP practice test. We're going to workshop them a little bit together in session here, and then we're going to see how ChatGPT might answer the same question, because it's really important for us to understand the benefits that ChatGPT is suggesting, and also to recognize the shortfalls. where you're going to have to rely on your own brain power rather than what ChatGPT is showing you. It's also a good tool, believe it or not, for your own pronunciation and conversational skills, especially for those of us who are maybe new to English language learning. ChatGPT itself will have a conversation aloud with you, and the voice will speak in a typically Canadian accent with the proper pronunciation and rhythm and intonation. So remember, on your CELPIP test, all of the listening activities you will complete are going to be spoken by 2 people, sometimes 3 people, who have these typically Canadian accents in English. So it's important to train our ear to that, and ChatGPT can actually help you with that. Remember, it is a chatbot or a robot, but it's been designed to be conversational. So the fluency is actually pretty accurate, as you'll see in a moment. Your grammar, sentence structure, and vocab, they're all elements that you're going to use when you produce your language. So yes, when you speak and write on CELPIP, you need to come up with these structures on your own, because ChatGPT won't be there during the test to help you out. But you also need to understand what you're reading about or listening to on the CELPIP test. So using ChatGPT almost as your tutor, if you will, to give you some language instruction on these very important foundational skills, that can be a huge benefit, but you need to know how to use it correctly and what types of questions to ask it, which we'll see today. And last but not least, it can be used somewhat in reading comprehension. Now, it's not going to help you with your own critical thinking skills. That's really up to you to practice and produce. But as far as understanding the overall general sense of what you're reading about, ChatGPT can actually help. So let's start off with some speaking skills. And again, if you've prepared for the CELPIP test, you'll understand that the speaking sections on CELPIP are done right in the testing room. You'll be sitting in front of your own little computer workstation during your whole test. And when you complete your speaking test, you're actually recording your own voice, your own answers into a microphone. And the responses that you create for all 8 CELPIP speaking tasks, the recordings will be sent off to the raters that are going to listen in and give you a score based on the strengths that you demonstrate. Now, ironically, even though we're talking about ChatGPT and AI today, right now, the current model, if you will, the raters that are scoring you on your speaking and writing right now are human raters. That could change down the road as AI continues to be more prevalent, but we need to know that we've got at least 3 different human raters listening into the responses you deliver. So they want to double check as they're listening to your recordings that you're demonstrating strength in these 4 little dimensions or skills categories. So your content details need to be specific and explained well and very interesting. The more focused and specific your ideas, the higher your score is going to be. And of course, your coherence has to be strong. So all your ideas must flow very smoothly from beginning to end as you speak. Your vocabulary also will be assessed. So I guess the first step would be to choose words that make sense as you're speaking aloud. They have to convey the right meaning. And then the next step would be to try to choose higher level vocabulary words that are more interesting and precise. Again, the more precise, the better your score. Listenability are the elements that include your speech delivery or speech presentation. So again, think about your pronunciation, your rhythm, your intonation. Your grammar and your sentence structure is also going to be assessed while you speak. The raters need to hear that you're capable of creating longer, more complex structures. That's going to help your score the most. And last but not least, your task fulfillment. So the raters will check that you've answered the question from your test fully and that all of your details are relevant and on topic. Your tone is important too. So whether you are creating more of a casual speech as you're talking maybe to a friend in a role play on the test, some questions might be more formal in approach, but your word choice is going to create a mood or an emotion. And that's what we mean by tone. And the length of your responses is taken into account as well. So basically, the more strength you can demonstrate across all 4 of these categories, the higher your score overall will be for your speaking assessment on the CELPIP test. So just to give us one practice question to work with today, I selected an example question from one of our free practice tests for CELPIP. You will find this on our website, celpip.ca. And we also workshop this one in one of my Zoom webinars that I deliver each month with test takers from around the world who are preparing. So you'll see, first of all, in the top right corner, that on the real test, you would have 30 seconds to read this question and start thinking of your ideas. And you must speak for 90 seconds. So that's something that you need to know going into this. ChatGPT might not necessarily know those details. So this will be important in a second. So here's what I'd like you to do as you're studying at home. We're going to demonstrate it right now. Rather than just go straight to ChatGPT and type in this question to see how ChatGPT will answer. It's not the most useful way to study because, again, ChatGPT is not going to be with you when you write your actual CELPIP test. So you still need to practice the skill of coming up with your own details or ideas. Come test day, you have to do it really quickly. But for now, as we're all studying together, I'm not going to worry so much about the time. So what I'm going to do is just read out loud this question. And in our live chat box here, right in our episode, I'd like you to start thinking about the actual pieces of advice you would offer to your friend for this question. And I'd like for you, please, to type in a word or a couple of words in our chat box right now that indicate how you might answer this question. And we can have Neil read some of your answers out loud in a second. So the question says, your friend is excited that he has been accepted into his first choice of university. However, he is not sure how he will be able to afford the tuition. So give your friend advice on what he should do to pay for his education. Okay, so as quickly as you can you share a few general ideas in our chat box to get us started? It's a 90-second question on the test. So I would suggest that you might want to come up with at least 3 pieces of advice to fulfill that time. Right? If you've only got one idea, you're not likely going to have enough to talk about for 90 seconds. So I'll give you just a moment to see if you can come up with your own ideas first. And then we're going to ask ChatGPT to answer the same question. And we'll compare additions and we'll see how the details might be the same or perhaps different.
Okay, so we've got a few suggestions coming in, Brandi.
Okay.
Our first one is to find part-time jobs.
That's the first thing I thought of too. And I bet you that's the most logical option that a lot of us would come up with. Yeah. So again, in your prep time, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we're also just hearing a lot of applying for financial aid, so student loans, this kind of thing.
Excellent. So part-time job, student loans. Can we think of one more idea? What else could you do?
Yeah, we've got someone saying scholarship options.
Perfect. Those were the 3 I thought of as well. There's probably more. Do we have a 4th? You might not have time to speak about 4 details, but you never know. The more details you think of, the better.
Support from family members.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Some of us would go to mom or dad or a friend or relative and perhaps borrow some money and work out a plan. Okay, so again, these are the details you're thinking about in that prep time. And then you'll be prompted on your test to speak for 90 seconds to deliver that answer. So here's, again, at home, let's say you did this all by yourself. We're not in session, we're copying it together. But I'd like you to come up with your own details at home. Perhaps even practice delivering your answer aloud. That's what I would do if I were studying for the CELPIP test, because you need to be able to produce the ideas, right, by yourself. But then for study purposes, what I would recommend you do is, if you don't already have the ChatGPT app, you would want to download it to your phone. So this is just a screenshot of what my phone looks like when I'm in the ChatGPT app. So it's a blank screen as I'm just starting a new conversation with it. All right, that little black circle in the center is just the logo for ChatGPT. So right down at the very bottom of the phone screen, you'll notice there's a bar that says message. So of course, that's where you would type in your prompts if that's what you wanted to do. But for right now, since we're working on speaking skills, what I recommend we try is we would hold down that little picture of the headset that you see in the bottom right-hand corner, the black circle. And when you hold that down, the screen is going to spin. That little disc in the middle will spin a bit and ask you to tap to connect. So once you've connected on screen, you'll see ChatGPT is saying to you, listening, at which point you could read in that CELPIP question to ChatGPT to see what type of details it might throw back at you. Remember, you've already thought of your own details. I think that's important. You're now just seeing if ChatGPT can be of further assistance. So I am going to play for you this conversation that I had with ChatGPT. And right before I play the audio, I wanted to show you the transcript that ChatGPT will generate. And any type of verbal conversation or written exercises you complete with the ChatGPT app, it's going to be stored for you in your own account, which I find incredibly useful. So if we did this practice today and came back to it 2 days from now when we're fresh, we could just open this transcript back up again and review the main points. And we learn better through repetition. We solidify the skills that we're learning. One little downside, though, of using any type of technology is there probably will be glitches from time to time. And when I play this audio for you, you can follow along with the ChatGPT transcript. But right here in the middle of this response, you can see where I just put those little red brackets. ChatGPT out loud skipped that sentence entirely. So she didn't read it out loud, but we can still see it in the transcript. I don't think that's a problem. It's not going to deter us from understanding the response, but I do mention it. As I say, any technological platform will have its own glitches. So just be aware of these things as you're studying. Okay, when I play this response for you now, I'd like you please to do 2 things. So first and foremost, we could listen just to the voice. So again, if you're not clear on what the natural rhythm and intonation should sound like as we speak, you'll hear ChatGPT is very conversational in that way. So it's a good tool for your listening skills. But I'd like you to follow the structure of this response because it's really well done. You'll notice that ChatGPT starts by summarizing the topic of what she's going to talk about, and then she gives us 3 different content details. So I'd like us to see how her content details compare to the ones we just thought of. All right, let's listen in first.
Why don't I type teach me sentence structure? We'll see what comes up here. Oh, I even typed that wrong, teach my sentence structure, but it looks like ChatGPT understands.
Sorry, Brandi. I think I might have played the wrong clip.
I think so. Yeah, this is me playing it. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. So sometimes humans have technological glitches too, everybody.
All the time.
Sorry,
I
should have explained to the audience too. I am going to show you a series of videos, and Neil is very helpfully going to display them. That was my fault. I didn't prompt you well enough, Neil. So I myself will play just the audio clip of this conversation, and then we'll get to the video. So let's listen to ChatGPT's speaking answer. We'll see how she does.
Give my friend advice on what he should do to pay for his education. Sure, I'd be happy to help your friend. There are several options he could consider to pay for his education. Firstly, scholarships and grants are great ways to get financial aid that doesn't need to be repaid. Additionally, working part-time or during summers can help cover some costs. If he needs to borrow money, federal student loans often have lower interest rates and more flexible repayment options compared to private loans. It's important for him to carefully consider his options and plan that works best for his situation.
Not bad. Again, from a speech delivery standpoint, this is very on par and quite natural. So that's a definite benefit to listen to. But again, if you look at, as I said, the way it's structured, look at the tone. It's pretty accurate. When you're giving advice to somebody and when you answer this question on your own CELPIP test, you want to support the friend that you're speaking to. You're going to be role-playing it. So you can see how ChatGPT is doing that. Oh, I'd be happy to help. Now, here's again where you need to override ChatGPT and use your own brain power, though. Okay, so again, I read this question in like so to ask ChatGPT to answer it for us. And you can see that she's answering my question. She says, sure, I'd be happy to help your friend. If this was the actual CELPIP test, you're prompted to speak directly to your friend. So you yourselves are going to need to make these distinctions. So you're going to take these ideas and adapt them to be more suitable for whatever CELPIP test question comes your way. So you might say, hey, Mark, I'm happy to help you with some tips on how you might make some money to pay for your schooling. So it's very similar to what's here, but again, this is not 100% accurate as to what the test is asking you. You can see she's using these little transitional words. So firstly, she came up with scholarships. I think we all did that ourselves. Secondly, look at her next transition. Additionally, that's a great word to know how to use, and she's done it well. She talks about working part-time, and then she also gets into these student loans. So she came up with the same 3 content details that we did. These are all strengths. One weakness, however, as you're studying is this response itself is only 45 seconds long. And on the real CELPIP test, remember, task 1, where you give advice, it asks you to speak for 90 seconds. So I ask you now, what's missing in ChatGPT's response? Based on everything we know about how to get a really strong score for the content area of our speech, what would we ourselves need to add in to our practice and then demonstrate on the real test? Can anybody see what's missing here in ChatGPT's answer? How do you make it longer, basically, and relevant and interesting, and all of those high-level skills that the raters are looking for? What could we do here? Scholarships, work, loans, great ideas, right? But they're very general ideas. Did anyone notice that there are no specific examples here whatsoever? So ChatGPT itself doesn't know the CELPIP test like you yourselves are going to know the CELPIP test. So you're going to come up with your own specific details. You could go back in and ask ChatGPT to be more specific, I suppose. But honestly, I think this would be easy enough for ourselves to do, whether we're studying or performing on the test. Can we do that with that second example where she talks about getting a part-time job? If this was your actual test answer and you were role-playing and speaking to your friend right out loud, what type of job might you recommend your friend go and get to make money for school? I'll give you about 15 seconds to see if we can get any ideas in our chat box. Again, Neil can share them. And if not, I'm happy to suggest a few. But this is, again, where ChatGPT doesn't necessarily support you enough. You'll need to come up with these details yourself if she doesn't. Where would you work if you were making money for school? Any ideas?
So far we've just got folks saying that there's no kind of greeting or anything like that. So making it a specific greeting to friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think we covered that, yeah. But anything about the content? Can we really get into content? Because this is the most important part. This is the biggest weakness of ChatGPT's answer, for sure. No specific details. So that means that our content's okay, but I don't think it's near as interesting or well-developed as we could possibly make it. How would you improve it?
So we've got folks saying to make it more personal, to bring your own experience or give examples.
Yeah. Can you do that for me now?
We've got someone saying pizza delivery, so as an example of a part-time job.
Perfect. What company? What company are you delivering pizza for? These are details you can throw in and should throw in. What's the first pizza chain that comes to your mind? I'm thinking of Domino's, Pizza Hut. What else? What else can you think of? Right? These are the types of details that I want you to throw in. What if you wanted your friend to be a barista? A barista is a type of job, but then where? Maybe we could advise our friend to apply to be a barista at the Starbucks on campus. So that way they can actually work nearby where they're taking their school, and they don't even have to worry about cabbing or taking transit to their job. That will save money too. So again, these are the types of details that you yourself are going to have to come up with on your own. ChatGPT is great in some senses, as you can see, but it's not going to know precisely what the raters are looking for, at least not right now. Anyway, this is the answer she gave me. Okay, so again, we won't workshop this any further today as we've got other topics to discuss. But the takeaway here is use the answers generated by ChatGPT as a nice, strong way to start, like a foundation, and then take what she's given and improve it yourself so that it matches precisely that checklist of skills that the raters are looking for. But yeah, tone is great, grammar is strong, etc., etc. One other feature of the conversations that I wanted to point out is that after you've completed whatever you're working on, ChatGPT will summarize and give a title for that exercise. So this is, again, my phone. I just swiped over to look at the table of contents, and that very top option there under the word today, it says pay for education options. So ChatGPT actually summarizes or gives a title for each of your exercises. And as I say, if tomorrow or next week you wanted to return to the practice you did, all you would need to do is go into your table of contents and just click on whatever exercise you'd like to review. So I like that it sort of keeps a record of your study sessions. And you can delete old sessions or archive them. You know, if CELPIP is what you're focusing on now, you might just want to keep CELPIP options up there, etc. Anyway, conversational tools and response structure, I think, is helpful with ChatGPT. I do want to dive a little deeper without making this into a grammar lesson. I promise I'll try not to. But sentence structure and grammar are integral skills that you're going to need to demonstrate well enough as you're speaking and writing. So this is the same transcript of that conversation we just had with ChatGPT. So this is her response about the tuition money and so on. So what I did is I looked through looking for examples of more complex structures. And the one in green is the one I'm drawing your attention to now. So if you weren't sure how to create longer, more complex structures, you could look at the work generated by ChatGPT. So this is a great example of a complex sentence using some suitable vocab. The problem is you don't know what you don't know. Meaning, if you haven't yet learned about sentence structure and you don't even know how to create a complex structure, looking at a transcript is not going to be so helpful because you probably wouldn't even be able to understand what a complex structure is. So this is where you can turn to ChatGPT as your own personal tutor. The catch is when you're asking it questions to teach you about these elements, we need to be very precise and focused. The more specific your question is, the more pertinent or relevant the information is that ChatGPT is going to show to you. So if you're really general and vague in the chat box, so for example, if all you typed in just says, teach me sentence structure, you're going to get so much information from ChatGPT that you probably won't even know what to do with it. So that would not be a great way to go about learning sentence structure. We need to be more precise. So now what I'd like us to do is we're going to watch a little video. It's about 2 minutes in length. And it's going to demonstrate, you'll hear me narrating, but you'll see me typing prompts into the ChatGPT screen. So I'm going to start off, excuse me, very general. And then I'm going to try to make my prompts a lot more precise. And you'll see the types of information given to us to help us study. So let's play that first video now and see how ChatGPT does.
Why don't I type teach me sentence structure? We'll see what comes up here. Oh, I even typed that wrong, teach my sentence structure, but it looks like ChatGPT understands. Okay, well, this is a good start in a sense. We get an example of a simple sentence and then some complex sentences too. And that's what we want to do for CELPIP. We want to take our writing that is simple and make it more complex. But there's a lot of information here. And this is one of the downfalls, I think, of using ChatGPT in the sense that if all we're doing is reading, if we don't know what a modifier is, I know it's defined here under number 4, but it's just, I feel like it's information overload. Until we actually start writing our own sentences, we're not really going to get any better and improve our writing. So if it is complex sentences that we want to improve, why don't we try to focus our command at the bottom? So teach me complex sentences. Let's see what happens now. So ChatGPT explains what complex sentences are. We are getting, all right, it looks like there's 2 different types of clauses. We are getting more bite-sized explanations. But once again, it's a little bit wordy. There's a lot to sift through. So if you're disciplined to study by yourself and read and internalize this information, good on you. That's really difficult for a lot of people to do. I think what might be better is read over that information. Oops, sorry. Let's have a look at examples of complex sentences. So that's what we've asked ChatGPT to give us. Okay, this is more helpful. So if we look at, there's 3 different categories here. We can see that the first example start with the dependent clause. The second example group starts with the independent clause. And then that last group down below has several clauses together. So I feel like at least we've got some models to work from. I would read through these, maybe just take a few at a time, and then try to write my own ideas. We can use these as a model, but until we produce the language, we're not going to get much better at it. So again, this is just a good start.
All right. So yeah, again, it's a good start to learn. But as I just said there, we need to actually write our own sentences out. So this is the next step in learning how to create this complexity. That's going to help you with the writing, but also in the speaking. So looking at the examples ChatGPT threw your way, you could just take some of those important conjunctions. So these are words that showed you, like because, although, even though, and so on. So write your own sentences out for practice. And then what I'd ask you to do, if you're interested in studying this further at home, is into the ChatGPT message box below. What you can do is ask ChatGPT to check over your grammar and writing and fix any mistakes whatsoever that it might find. It can even explain to you the rules of grammar and why you got it wrong and how to correct it properly and so on. You can then start adding complexity and whatnot. So I'd like to play just a second video. This one's a little bit longer. It's closer to 4 minutes, but it's going to walk you through the process and show you sort of step by step how you could use ChatGPT for precise grammar and sentence structure correction. So Neil, if we could play that second video, that would be great.
If we want to make sure that we don't have any grammar mistakes or sentence structure errors, we can ask ChatGPT to correct our grammar for us. So in that little command box, let's type in correct my grammar. Now we're going to put a colon, which is a dot dot, and a space bar here. And then we're just going to paste in whatever we've been working with. So I just wrote a few things here and I made a lot of mistakes on purpose to see what ChatGPT could do. So ChatGPT simply just gives us the corrected version as plain as day. So you can see my version up top. You can see the corrected version there down below. Now, if I'd like, I can also now ask ChatGPT to explain the mistakes that I made. So I'm going to type in here, explain mistakes. Okay, so how many did I make? Looks like there were 5 mistakes, and this is, I think, probably the most valuable way to learn. We always learn from our errors. So understanding what we did wrong and seeing how we can make it right is going to help us remember the rules to improve our writing in the long haul as well. What if I wanted to take what I've already written there? What if I now wanted to add some complex sentences? Because that's really something that we've been working on here. So again, it's my own initial version, and here's what ChatGPT is able to write out with more complexity. And I'll just read it out loud really quickly. It says, while dining, I found that my meal lacked satisfaction. The pasta I had ordered was disappointingly undercooked, and the salad, though fresh, suffered from a deficiency of dressing. Despite these culinary disappointments, I managed to enjoy the ambiance and conversation. All right. I have to be honest here. I'm not too happy with the version that ChatGPT has given to us. When I asked it for more complex sentence structure, I was hoping that the sentences themselves would be longer and more complex. And what ChatGPT has also done is played around with the vocabulary. And it doesn't sound natural any longer. Rather than say, I found my meal lacked satisfaction. That's almost a wordy way to say that. And we wouldn't say that there was a deficiency of dressing. It's fancy language, yes, but it's just not natural. And culinary disappointments, that's not even my own writing style. I would never speak that way. I wouldn't write that way. And again, enjoying the ambiance on the conversation. These are just really, really big, fancy words that aren't used in a way that I feel are overly natural. So if you're not happy with the version that ChatGPT gives to you, using the cursor, down here, you see that little regenerate arrow to go back if you were in time. There. So we click on that, and it's going to give us another version. So this one says, well, I appreciated the ambiance of the restaurant. I found that I didn't quite enjoy my meal as much. The pasta I ordered was undercooked, which detracted from the overall experience. Furthermore, I noticed that there wasn't enough dressing on the salad, leaving it a bit dry and lacking in flavor. I like that version 100% better. It's definitely fancier and more complex, which are skills that we're hoping to achieve on our own when we take the CELPIP test. But I think that the wording here is quite a bit more natural than that first version. So what you can do next here is down here, ChatGPT will ask you if this response is better or worse than that first one. I'm going to click better because I'm hoping that we can help to train ChatGPT and help it understand what sounds natural and what doesn't.
Okay, so again, I do find ChatGPT, as I mentioned, for your grammar, sentence structure skills, not bad. Vocabulary, though, is not the easiest way to go as you're trying to improve yourself using an AI bot. So to prove this point, I've selected just another speaking task from one of our free practice tests. This is task 3. And for speaking task 3 on CELPIP, you're always going to be given a picture, and you will be asked the same instructions each time. You're to describe some things that are happening in the picture below as well as you can. So to workshop this really quickly, I'm going to ask for some of you in our live chat box there today, if you can help me describe what these two people are doing. So this is how you would study first at home. We're not just going to turn to ChatGPT to see what she can tell us, because again, we need to practice coming up with our own ideas and vocabulary. We'll use ChatGPT second to see if she can offer any benefit to us. So if we wanted to describe these two people here in the present occurrence, so we're using this verb tense, right? These ing verb tenses. I'll maybe give the first sentence, and then I'd like to see if any of you would like to also offer an idea into our chat box. So if I was talking about these two, I might say, the man and the woman are walking away from the counter. There. So that's a simple idea, yes, but at least it's accurate. So for now, can we just try to get a couple other ideas from all of you to practice the skill? So what else are these two people doing? Can you see something that they've got in their hands, for example? Maybe you could work with that. Can you see what they're looking at? Maybe you can work with that. We'll give you just a few moments here, and we'll see if Neil can find any great examples of descriptions. Do your best. What are these two people doing? Task 3, CELPIP. So the man and the woman are, or they are. How would you finish that? What else are they doing other than walking? Which is pretty simple.
Okay, so we've got some folks saying that they are on a date.
Ooh, I like that. That's a great idea, folks. Love it. Yeah. They are on a date, and they are, maybe we can talk about what they're doing with their arms or their eyes, because they're on a date.
So they're carrying their popcorns and discussing. So maybe talking about the movie they're about to see or just saw or whatever the case is.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah. I like how they are, they're carrying their popcorn. They are gazing because they're on a date. They're looking into each other's eyes with huge smiles on their faces. So you could have a lot of fun with this. But the point is, whatever description we give, first and foremost, the most important part of this is it has to be accurate. It has to be natural. So we're going to take some of these ideas that we just looked at, and what I decided I'd try anyway is to see if ChatGPT could improve our vocabulary just a bit. So into the message prompt for ChatGPT, I myself typed that little command up top. It says, improve my vocabulary, ... or colon. And then I pasted in or wrote in one common description that described that same couple. So I said in my own words, the man and woman are walking away from the counter. They are smiling. They are holding containers of popcorn. So all of those ideas are accurate, but I wondered if ChatGPT could do anything to really elevate the interest level of my vocab choice. So when I asked it to do so, here's what ChatGPT gave to us. So first of all, it's helpful. It says, certainly, here's the refined version. And I'll read out loud the example that ChatGPT has given. And I'd like you to decide if it sounds natural or not. So here's ChatGPT. It says, the gentleman and the lady gracefully stroll away from the counter, their faces adorned with radiant smiles. Each of them clutches a delightful container of popcorn, adding to the aura of contentment surrounding them. Does that sound natural to you, as if you would be describing the picture? Can we just say a yes or a no in the chat box? Here in YouTube, I mean. What do you think? Does it pass the grade? Is it suitable for this task? Or not at all? I'm curious to see how you'll assess this. Any brave souls want to offer their opinions?
We've got some folks saying no.
This is terrible. I had a hard time reading this out loud while keeping a straight face. And the reason I think it's almost laughable is because what ChatGPT is doing, remember, it's been trained on hundreds of billions of vocabulary words. So it's grabbing at all of these sources, trying to cobble together something that sounds very sophisticated. And the problem is language doesn't often work that way. In language, we need to be accurate and we have to consider the context of what we're talking about. So again, popcorn, a container of popcorn, have you ever considered popcorn to be delightful? I myself haven't. Popcorn can be delicious, it can be tasty, it can be buttery, it can be a lot of things, but delightful is not really a common association we would make. And that whole notion about adding to the aura of contentment, that is what I would call over the top. We've lost our natural ability to describe. So because CELPIP is not asking you to write a poem or complete a creative writing piece, it's asking you to speak in day-to-day language, describing the scene to the best of your ability. I would say that this version is not that great. So what you could do again, and what I did do, is I regenerated this answer, as I just showed you in that last video. So when I hit the regenerate button, this is the second attempt that ChatGPT gave to me. So the bolded words right now are the differences compared to the last version. So this time, instead of strolling away from the counter, ChatGPT decided to say that the couple is sauntering away. And saunter isn't something that's usually done by people, as far as I can recall. Saunter would be like a horse that's kind of moving gracefully through a field. It's an unusual word choice. And now, rather than say their faces, ChatGPT has gone even above and beyond and said their countenances are adorned with radiant smiles. I know what a countenance is, but again, it doesn't fit the tone of this piece properly. And what made me laugh even harder is that last sentence. I'll read it out loud. None of this is natural, I don't think. It says here, in their grasp, they cradle containers brimming with delectable popcorn, adding a touch of joviality to their leisurely stroll. So again, yeah, it's complex and it's fancy sounding, but when you look at the actual words, it's not suitable word choice. If you are cradling a container, you cradle something because it's delicate or fragile and you want to protect it. Popcorn is not something that I consider to be fragile. And if you're grasping onto something, same thing. You're grasping it for dear life because you're afraid it's going to fall. And that's not at all the image in the picture that we were given. All right, again, adding a touch of joviality. It's just over the top. It's what I would call flowery language that doesn't actually add value. We're trying to detract from the content with fancy word choices. And this is what not to do on your CELPIP test. Quite frankly, if we had to choose between that top example that I created to start with and this bottom one, the top example would be the better choice, in my opinion anyway. And last but not least, I generated this 8 times, by the way, and it never really got any better. Here's another attempt. Now the last sentence says, each person clasps a vessel of popcorn, their hands intertwine as they embark on their cinematic journey. And again, I think by now we can see that that's not very natural. I've never heard a container of popcorn referred to as a vessel of popcorn. That's just a highly unusual word choice. So ChatGPT is not that great for vocab is what I've gleaned. If you've got other tips and tricks you want to share with us in the chat box yourself, you're welcome to do so. But I don't find it the best way to go for your vocabulary development. So what I tried to do, rather than give it just sentences to work with, because I thought maybe that was the problem, I really narrowed it down to little parts of my own idea. So for containers of popcorn, I was still hoping we could come up with a better word than container because it's a bit plain. So I myself typed into the message box synonyms for containers of popcorn. So I wanted to see if ChatGPT could be more helpful. No, not at all. So the only suggestions she gave us were, again, popcorn vessels and popcorn holders, which I've never heard in my life. So I don't think that's great. I regenerated. Oh, great. Now we have popcorn receptacles. Now, if you do just a plain old Google search of the meaning of the word receptacle, Google will tell you, excuse me, that receptacle actually means a space used to put something. So when you take that little meaning or broad definition, you could see how ChatGPT has snuck that word in to talk about the popcorn container. Because a container, too, is a place where you put things. But what ChatGPT doesn't understand, I guess, is that a popcorn is not referred to as a popcorn receptacle. We use the word receptacle most commonly when we're talking about trash cans or garbage cans. So you might have heard somebody refer, if you're looking for where to put your garbage, somebody might say there's a trash receptacle over there. That's a really fancy way of saying there's a trash can just over there. So again, ChatGPT has some great ideas, but vocab not so much. I would highly recommend you be very cautious if you're using it for vocab development. Can I ask all of you to now help the rest of us out? Are there any other words you can think of that are natural and suitable to describe a container of popcorn? Can we swap out the word container with something better than what ChatGPT has given us?
Rahul is saying tubs of popcorn, which sounds natural to
Yes.
me.
That's the first one I thought of. Well done, Rahul. Anybody else? There's a second one I can think of.
Bucket of popcorn.
Yes, fantastic. You read my mind. Those were the exact two that I thought of off the top of my head. And again, it came from up here. It did not come from an AI robot that doesn't necessarily know the context of the setting. So again, you're probably asking, well, great, if I can't use ChatGPT for vocab development, how do I get any better at it? Probably you're not going to love the answer, but this is why I keep saying the more you read anything, whether it's a fictional novel, a newspaper article, what have you, the more you read and you see how words are created in sequence and meaning, the more you're going to be exposed to that language and understand. So when you hear things like popcorn holders, you'll know right away, that doesn't really make sense. I don't think that's accurate. Or you can tune into live classes like what we're doing here on YouTube. We've got Zoom sessions to help you out. You could take a language learning class yourself, etc. Get together with a study group. But the more we share ideas with others, I think, the more we're exposed to different language. So I repeat, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but just because ChatGPT said it doesn't mean that it's right or true, right? So we always have to take what we're learning with a grain of salt. So please be aware of that as you're using it as a study tool. I'd like to look at writing now. This is probably one of the more common questions we get is how do I structure an email for the CELPIP writing test web? So again, when you complete your writing test and you're writing out an email for that first question, remember that again, to get your score for writing, you're going to have at least 4 different human raters read through the response. And they're looking as well for almost the same strengths of skill sets that the speaking raters were looking at. So we still want to see content details that are specific and interesting. We want to see vocab that is suitable and also precise. Readability is the major difference here. So because you're not actually speaking out loud, clearly we can't assess your pronunciation and such. So for readability instead, the raters are going to look at how well you're structuring the format of your email, how well you are paragraphing your work. They will be looking at your sentence structure and your grammar and things like this, and how smoothly you've connected ideas together. And then task fulfillment is the same. Did you answer the question fully, and is your tone correct, etc. There is a word count here as well, between 150 to 200 words that you'll be asked to complete. So this is my favorite question to workshop. I've done it in many of our past Zoom sessions. We've got a YouTube episode here from a couple of years ago all about this, by the way, if you wanted to go back later and look. But I took this question from one of our free CELPIP practice tests. And in case it's new to you, I will quickly just read it out loud to you. And then we're going to see what ChatGPT can do with it. So on your writing test, you will have 27 minutes to start for your email question. You must read the background information first. So this question says, you recently made reservations for dinner at a very famous and expensive restaurant in town. However, the meal and the service were terrible. The restaurant manager was not available to solve the problem, so you left without a resolution. So you need to know that first. Over here, it will tell you who you're to email. So email the restaurant's manager, reminds you of the word count, and then tells you that your email should include these details. So we have to explain or state the problems that we had with the food. We then complain about the service and describe how we want the restaurant to resolve that situation, right? We left so unhappy. So again, when you're practicing at home for study sessions, this is a great one to practice because I think most of us have probably had a restaurant meal that was awful. So always, I would say, use your own life experience to guide your content. So I would strongly recommend you come up with your own details first, because that's how you'll be doing it on the real test. Once you've thought of your own details, you can even type out your practice draft, and then you're welcome to turn to ChatGPT, and you can actually copy and paste the exact same writing prompt into ChatGPT to see what type of a response it's going to give you. So can we play our third video now? It's a very quick 15-second video. I just want to show you how quickly ChatGPT will answer this for us. So let's take a look here now. There's no sound this time. Okay. So what I did is just literally copied that response ChatGPT gave to us right now, and I just pasted it into the screen here so we can all have a closer look. Because again, there are some wonderful things that ChatGPT is doing to help us understand how to structure our writing, but it's not perfect. There are definitely elements here that we would want to improve ourselves if this was a real CELPIP test question. So let's take just a couple of minutes and make sure we understand what those strengths and weaknesses are. So first of all, because the instructions we gave ChatGPT, we said, remember, it's between 150 to 200 words. So ChatGPT has followed that for us. The full response is 188 words. So that would be a good length for a real test question. But right at the top, this is sort of like what happened in the speaking question that she gave us, right? Right at the top, it says, "Dear manager's name." Well, it's very unlikely in the real world that you would even know who the manager was because there was no manager on site, according to the question. So you would have to adapt these details to suit the test question. So because we don't know the name, probably you would use the job title. So "Dear restaurant manager" would be more suitable for this particular test question. I love how ChatGPT gives us the structure though. We've got several paragraphs, and then we've got our sign off, and then you would sign your name. Now there should be a space between the sign off and your name. ChatGPT didn't give that to us, but it's something you would know and remember to do on your own test as well. As far as content goes, the first paragraph for your CELPIP test will be quite short. A couple of sentences like this is perfect. And what you're doing is you're explaining to the reader the purpose for your email. And ChatGPT has done that fairly well. I'll read it out loud. Can you tell me something that you might improve though? There's a little weakness here I feel we could do even better. So ChatGPT starts off by saying, "I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to express my disappointment regarding my recent dining experience at your restaurant. Unfortunately, the food and service fell far below my expectations." So from a content standpoint, I feel that that summarizes accurately the test question. So I think that part of this response is done quite well. There are two things I would do differently though if this was a real test question, and I'm curious to see if our audience today has any recommendations. So based on what you know about what the raters are looking for from you and how you're going to maximize your writing score, are there a couple of elements that you might adjust if this was your actual test question? I'll give you some time to think. And let's just focus on the first paragraph for now. We'll get to the next one in a second. I'll give you about 15 seconds and then I'll help. This is tricky. I'm looking for little fine touches that will help you improve. So it's not super obvious. So if you don't know what I mean right now, don't worry. Probably a lot of people are not quite sure.
So we've got some folks saying again along the personalization lines that the name of the restaurant and who they came with.
I think those would be wonderful details to add. I noticed that too. So remember, I keep saying it, but you have to remember the content details, the more specific, the more precise, the more interesting, the better the score. So if all we're saying is "I ate at your restaurant," that is really general. So why not take a moment to actually name the restaurant? So "I ate at the Keg last night," or Eastside Mario's, or the Olive Garden, or whatever restaurant it happened to be. Just pick one, but having a precise name will help. I don't think you need to do this in an email. I hope this email finds you well. It's polite and it's friendly, but remember, you've only got about 200 words to impress the raters with content. So for your CELPIP test, I don't think you need to waste the word count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 words right there that we probably don't even need. I would start off by giving the introduction. You know, "I ate at the Keg last night with my family to celebrate my son's birthday." Something like that shows that personalization that you just mentioned there in the chat box. And I think that's helpful for any writing piece to really beef up the interest level and make it your own. Okay, now this summary it looks good to me because yes, we are talking about the poor food and service. Another little element I noticed though, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm looking at how strongly negative the language is. We're creating an incredibly harsh tone right at the beginning. So when we say "I'm writing to express my disappointment," and "unfortunately," and "it fell far below my expectations," Imagine for a second you are the manager reading this, and this is the first thing you read. The manager might be surprised at first and then worried that he's failed his customer, but then they might even be a little bit offended or angered by that because it sounds quite critical and negative. So we want to replace a lot of these negative words with a softer tone. Tone is one of the elements you're going to be scored upon for your CELPIP test. Again, remember, ChatGPT is a bot. It doesn't necessarily have the context and understand the tone half as well as you will using your own brain power. So again, strengths and weaknesses, yes, of using AI technology. And the last big point I wanted to make here is this whole paragraph is decent in the way that it does fulfill the question. We do have a couple examples of what was wrong with the food. So it was overcooked, didn't have a lot of flavor. Great, 2 details. And then the service, on the other hand, was slow. And then the staff didn't give us a lot of attention. So we do have sort of 2 ideas for why the food was terrible and so was the service. But once again, we're lacking the personalization. Rather than the dish I ordered, can you be specific? If I mentioned the Keg Steakhouse in my opening, could I now say, the filet mignon I ordered was overcooked, right? It's just a little touch. It's a little swap rather than the dish, because that's general. We know vocab's important on CELPIP. So you're going to do your best to bring in your own personal experiences. Okay, if the wait times were long, great. How long? Maybe we might want to say the service was extremely slow and we waited a full half hour before receiving our meals. That's a lot better than just saying there was a long wait time. So again, ChatGPT gives you the start. You're going to take this and run with it, which is a casual expression, meaning use it as a foundational tool and add in your own details to make it even better to suit your purposes for the CELPIP test. The other slight issue I have here, even though the paragraphs are correct right now, remember there were 3 bulleted points. We had to complain about food, complain about service, and ask for a resolution. So those first 2 points about food and service are crammed into 1 paragraph here. And then these 2 larger paragraphs below, they both talk about the resolution. So here, I guess we're asking that the staff be retrained so that they can give better service. And then down here, we're asking for a free meal or a complimentary meal and a voucher for a future visit. So these ideas make sense. Yes, they're accurate. But why are we devoting 2 entire paragraphs to just that one little part of the test question, and then taking 2 other equally important points and cramming them into 1 paragraph without details? So again, ChatGPT doesn't necessarily know what's going to benefit you the most on your own writing test. We know that the raters for task fulfillment want to see you give lots of interesting details, but in a balanced way. So if this were my response, I would take this, what ChatGPT gave me, and I would just revise it slightly. So I would write 1 paragraph all about the food, how it was bad. I would then write a 2nd paragraph about how the service was not so great. And then I would have 1 paragraph talking about whatever I'd asked, whether it's a refund for my meal or a free food voucher for a future visit. That would definitely balance up those tasks a lot better. Okay, so again, pros and cons to using artificial intelligence. Good start, but you probably will have a better understanding of what's expected on CELPIP. Now, I know we're short on time today, but I had 1 quick little tip I wanted to say for the end. It might help you in reading or just language development in general. So recently, in particular, we've had quite a few questions about reading part 4. We did a reading webinar yesterday on Zoom, and a lot of the students right off the top said, oh, I find reading part 4 so hard. And it is. If you are getting questions on reading part 4 correct on CELPIP, you are an advanced learner. You're getting a level 12 or a level 11. That's the way this test is designed. So when you're practicing, and again, this is an example from one of our free practice tests, I would still recommend you read through the passage in English as it's presented. Try your best to answer the questions and see what score you get. The free practice test will score it for you and you'll see what level. If you're having an incredibly difficult time understanding the passage altogether, I almost hate to suggest this, but you could turn to ChatGPT and use the translation tool. So if you were to take, say, even the first paragraph of this passage and copy and paste it into ChatGPT, you could ask ChatGPT to translate it for you into whatever your first language might be. So at the very least, you can read through and see if you understand the content a little bit better. All right, I've got 1 last little video I thought we could play here. It's about 1.5 minutes long, same thing. And it's going to share or show you how to do the translations. It's a nifty tool. Let's have a look and see.
So in order to do a translation into any language at all, down in the bottom here in the message box, you are going to type in translate to, and you'll have to identify the language that you want to read the text into. So just for fun, what I'm going to do is I've copied the first paragraph from a CELPIP reading part 4 from a practice test, and I'm going to paste it right here into the box. You can see I've asked ChatGPT to translate this English paragraph into Spanish. So after I click the enter button, within seconds, ChatGPT has done the translation for us. So if Spanish is your first language and you're having a difficult time understanding the English version as you're practicing at home, this could be a useful tool to give you a better understanding of the background information. I would trust that you would still read through the version in English and answer the practice test questions as well. They're all in English too, of course. But again, using a translation tool for some people might be helpful. And you can translate it into any language at all. So translate to English, for example. So if I had taken that Spanish paragraph and pasted it into the box here, it would just spit it right back out at us in the English language. So feel free to use translations if it's helpful for you, again, to get an overall general sense about what you're reading.
All right. And the last thing I'll mention about translations, another benefit I would say for your own study purposes, is that if you do translate it back to your first language and then go back and retake the practice test, if your score improves significantly, what that tells you is that your struggles or your challenges with the reading is not necessarily anything to do with your ability to comprehend and use critical thinking skills, etc. So if in your own language you can understand better and answer these questions with more accuracy, then that tells you that it's probably an underdeveloped sense of vocabulary. So if that's the case, then you would need to work on your vocabulary skills in English so that come test time, you would actually understand the gist of the article, hopefully with the same natural fluency as you would in your first language. So it's a good tool to understand. And I bring this up because just yesterday I was workshopping with a student who was really struggling. And the first question I said is, well, why is reading so hard for you? I think he had done level 10 in all other parts of the CELPIP test, but for whatever reason on reading, he's getting about a level 7. So I said, well, what is it about reading that's difficult for you? And he said, I don't even know. And I said, well, this is something you could do at least as a check-in, right? Because you yourselves are your best tool. You need to know what's making it difficult for you so that you can then implement strategies to overcome that. So again, understanding, is it the comprehension that's struggling or making me struggle? Or is it just lack of vocabulary understanding in English? Those are two completely different skill sets. And clearly you have to have command of both of them if you're going to do well on the advanced part of the test. Anyway, let's wrap up as we're a little bit over time here today. But what we looked at for the benefits today, I just summarized the benefits of how ChatGPT might help you for your CELPIP prep. Again, your conversation practice for speaking and listening, it can have a conversation with you. So that's just an easy way to tune your ear into the Canadian accent, if you will. If you do choose to use it as your tutor, remember to ask precise questions. So not just teach me sentence structure. That's huge. You really want to narrow it down. Again, teach me complex or give me examples of complex structures, etc., etc. It will correct your grammar for you. So when you do your own practice, whether it's sentence structure or paragraph writing, you can paste that into ChatGPT and ask it to correct the writing for you. Ask it to explain the rules as well, though, because you need to know what you did was wrong and why, and then you need to be able to see what the correct version looks like. And then the more you practice the correct versions, of course, the more you improve your own ability to write and to speak. When you use ChatGPT to give you sample responses from a speaking or writing test, as we did today for both, again, use those responses it gives you as a good starting point. But please remember the rater's checklist. You yourself will know exactly what skills are going to be worth more on the test. And ChatGPT will not know that half as well. So always use your best judgment when you're reading back anything that the bot has generated for you. Oftentimes there will be lots of great ideas to start you off, but I want you to take those ideas and then make them your own, personalize your answers so you don't sound like a robot when you're speaking and writing. Remember all that awful vocabulary work we looked at today? Don't talk or write like that. Make it your own and be personal. And then we did just look at translating passages. I do find that helpful to a point, as long as we are still able to speak and write in English and understand what we're doing for the CELPIP test. Anyway, I will unshare my screen and come back to you in case we've got any questions here today. Again, apologies for keeping you a little bit later than normal, but we had lots to get through today. Yeah. All right.
So I think we've got time for one question. Jay just had a general question about going over the word limit. So can it be more than 200 words for the writing response?
Yeah, so the readers are always generous, believe it or not, and they will give you a 10% leeway. So you could write up to 220 words and still be within the limit. Again, if you go, let's pretend for a moment you wrote 225 words. Technically, that's over the limit, but making that kind of a mistake is so small. I mean, if you've still demonstrated all of your important, interesting details and your grammar and sentence structure is high level and correct, having a little tiny mistake like a few too many words is really not going to impact your score. So thank you for asking that, Joy. I get that question just about every Zoom webinar I ever deliver. My answer is always the same. And I just recommend to everyone studying, the expression I love is don't sweat the small stuff. Do you know this casual expression? It just means focus your study time on the big ticket items like content details. I'm the only one that can come up with my own details. That matters. But having the odd little spelling mistake or the odd extra word here and there is really not going to affect your score. Yeah, but it's a great question. Thanks for asking me.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brandi. That was fantastic.
All right, thanks. And you can continue to explore ChatGPT as I will. I want to see what else I can get it to do for me.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Neil.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. I haven't forgotten about our trivia question, so I didn't see anyone drop it into the chat, but if you do know when the next solar eclipse is, if you missed the last one, it's coming up on March 30th, 2033. So a short 9-year wait for the next one in case you missed it. Okay, well, thank you again for joining us today on CELPIP Live, and we see you guys again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.